Welcome to the Lantern Bible Study Series. We'll continue the book of Ruth. We read Ruth chapter 1 and go through chapter 2, and we are now in chapter 3. So let's go to chapter 3. I hope that you have listened to all those previous Lantern Bible series. Now, chapter 3. Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, I need to seek some security for you, so that it may be well with you. Now, here is our kinsman Boaz, with whose young women you have been working. See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Now wash and anoint yourself, and put on your best clothes, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he'll tell you what to do." She said to her, "All that you tell me I will do." So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had instructed her. This passage highlights a quiet yet profound act of faithfulness. Ruth does not partially obey. She entrusts herself fully to Naomi's guidance. In doing so, we see not only Naomi's wisdom and loving concerns for Ruth's future, but also Ruth's deep trust, humility, and courageous obedience. And how many of us actually can follow this type of instruction? It is almost like rated R or more than that action, and we hesitate if we are actually in this situation. And Ruth understood why Naomi spoke this way, because she was seeking not just a survivor, but a future, a place of rest for Ruth. And in seeking Ruth's future, Naomi was also quietly seeking her own, of course. However, Naomi knew her limits. As an older widow, she could not secure her future alone. Ruth, as a Moabite, lived on the margins with little chance of being fully received into Israelite society. By every standard, both women were vulnerable. But here is the turning point. They did not face their vulnerability alone. Instead, they formed a community of care. I know it's small, fragile, and yet powerful. Naomi offers wisdom, vision, and guidance. That's what matured people can do. Ruth offers trust, courage, and faithful action. That's what young generation can do. One discerns the path, the other walks it. Together, they become more than what either could be alone. So this collaboration between the matured generations and younger generations, that's what we need to see in our church settings also to make a caring community. This is what a caring community looks like. It is not a gathering of perfect people. It is not a group of the strong helping the weak. It is a circle of mutual dependence. where each person brings what they have, and together they create a future none of them could secure alone. In our churches today, we often ask, how can we become a community where no one has to face life alone? Ruth and Naomi show us that transformation does not begin with programs or power. It begins with a relationship of trust, shared risk, and faithful presence. With whom are you building your home? This is the question. And here is the gospel hidden in the story. When we build such communities, when we care for one another across differences, vulnerabilities, and even boundaries, God begins to weave redemption among us. What starts as two widows trying to survive becomes the doorway to the lineage of David and ultimately to the coming of Christ. So the question for us is not simply, what is your hope? But rather, with whom are you building that hope? And Ruth 2 7 to 10. Let me read the Bible first. When Boaz had eaten and drunk, and he was in a contented mood, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came quietly and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight, the man was startled and turned over, and there, lying at his feet, was a woman. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your cloak over your servant, for you are next of kin." He said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. This last instance of your loyalty is better than the first. You have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich." The phrase, "spread your cloak over your servant," is a request for marriage. It is an appeal for protection, commitment, and covenant love under the responsibility of kinsman redeemer. When Boaz notes that Ruth did not pursue younger men, it suggests that Boaz himself was older. Now, Ruth chooses obedience and trust over personal preference. It is a courageous act of vulnerability, placing her future into the hands of another and ultimately into the hands of God. In this way, she was like Isaac, who willingly laid himself on the altar in Genesis chapter 22, trusting rather than resisting. So Isaac was a young man. He was able to resist his elderly father, over 100 years old. However, he didn't resist and he voluntarily went up to the altar as a sacrifice. Now, Ruth was able to say no to the Naomi's suggestion, but Ruth accepted it voluntarily and performed all the sacrificial acts as Naomi instructed. So Ruth's act was not driven by romance, but by covenant faithfulness. She chose trust over preference and obedience over comfort. In her vulnerability, God began to shape redemption. An Ishmael, a man of strength, and integrity. I read the Bible first, and now, my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask. For all the assembly of my people know that you are a worthy woman. But now, though it is true that I am a near kinsman, there is another kinsman more closely related than I. Remain this night, and in the morning, if he will act as next of kin for you, good, let him do so. If he is not willing to act as next of kin for you, then as the Lord lives, I will act as next of kin for you. Lie down until the morning. We remember that Boaz was described as an Ishmael in chapter 2, verse 1. Ishmael, Chayil is the Hebrew word that means strong or honest or integrity. So Ishmael is a man of strength and integrity. We see this clearly in both his words and his actions. He is morally upright and committed to doing what is right, even when it is not the easiest path. Rather than taking advantage of the situation, he insists on following the proper legal process. His plan depends on the character of the closer kinsman. As we will see later, that man is willing to risk his own status and is concerned mainly with preserving his property. In contrast, Boaz acts with both righteousness and compassion. However, Ruth was also a Chayil. And now, my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask. For all the people of my town knows that you are a worthy woman. You know, this English translation of worthy woman is in Hebrew, Eshet Chayil. And Boaz is described as an Ishmael, a man of strength, honor, and integrity. And Ruth, in turn, is called an Eshet, a woman of noble character. This is not just a compliment. It is a recognition that both of them embody covenant faithfulness. So here the word Chayil is really important for characters like Ruth and Boaz, and for those people who needs to build a community of caring. Boaz's strength is not domination, but integrity. He refused to cut corners. Even when he has the power to act immediately, he chooses to honor the proper process. He binds himself to truth even when it introduces risk. And Ruth's strength is not control, but courageous vulnerability. She places herself in a position of uncertainty, trusting both Boaz and ultimately God. Here, an Ishmael meets an Eshet. Strength meets faithfulness. Integrity meets trust. And in that meeting, something holy begins to unfold. In other words, God begins to weave redemption. The other kinsman, as we will later see, is unwilling to risk his own security. He chooses a preservation over responsibility, but Boaz chooses differently. His strength is revealed not in what he protects for himself, but in what he is willing to give for another. This is the kind of strength that builds a community of caring, not power over others, but faithfulness toward others. And when such a strength and such a vulnerability come together, God does more than resolve a problem. God begins to weave redemption. I will read the Bible again. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before one person could recognize another. For he said, it must not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Then he said, bring the cloak you are wearing and hold it out. So she held it, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her back. When he went into the city, she came to her mother in law, who said, how did things go with you, my daughter? Then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, for he said, do not go back to your mother in law empty handed. She replied, wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today. When Naomi heard Ruth's report and saw the 6 measures of barley, she trusted both Boaz's ability and his willingness to act. The gift was more than provision. It was a sign of a promise. Naomi recognized that Boaz would not delay. He would follow through and bring the matter to completion. So the 6 measures of barley is probably not just a random detail, even though the text doesn't fully explain it. Scholars usually suggest a few possibilities, a sign of provision and care. Boaz makes sure Ruth does not return empty handed, echoing Naomi's earlier lament in Ruth 121. I went out with full members of the house, but I came back with empty. This is already a reversal. Emptiness is beginning to be filled. A pledge of intention. The barley functions almost like a down payment, a visible sign that Boaz will follow through, like honest money when you buy a property. And a message to Naomi. This gift reassures Naomi that Boaz is both willing and able. It's not just the kindness, it's commitment. So I hope that we can see that to build a community of caring, we have to sacrifice at least something. And Naomi sacrificed her memory of her son, who is dead now, and Ruth sacrificed her youth. And Boaz sacrificed his reputation as an Orthodox Jew who would not marry a Moabite pagan woman. To do that would be really a big damage to his reputation. But he did for the sake of Ruth and Naomi.